The USS Harriet Tubman dropped out of its experimental full drive with a shudder that rattled every bolt on the ship, and Captain Ellen Brooks nearly spilled her coffee across the console. "Report," she said, wiping her sleeve. "Drive's cooked, Captain," said Danny Ortiz, the ship's engineer, already halfway under a panel. "We got a full jump instead of the test hop. Somebody's gonna owe me a new capacitor bank." Brooks looked up at the view screen and stopped breathing for a second. Ships. Hundreds of them. Vast cathedral-spired vessels the size of small moons, arranged in slow, deliberate orbital lanes around a golden ringworld that wrapped a star like a wedding band. Lights blinked across its surface in patterns too regular to be natural, cities, maybe, or something grander than cities. Captain," said Grace Whitfield, the mission's diplomatic officer, standing so fast her chair spun. "I think we just stumbled into somebody's living room." A calm request blinked in, translated on the fly by the ship's linguistic array into something like formal court Latin filtered through a synthesizer. A face resolved on screen, elongated, silver-skinned, eyes like polished obsidian, wearing robes stitched with moving constellations. "Unlisted vessel," the being said. "You have entered the sovereign space of the Therian Dominion without registration, escort, or divine sanction. Identify yourselves before the Ascendant Fleet renders judgment." Ortiz went pale. Whitfield's hand hovered over the abort switch for the translator, as if that would help. Brooks set down her coffee. "This is Captain Ellen Brooks, Earth vessel Harriet Tubman. Sorry about the entrance, our engine hiccuped. We're not here to cause trouble. Mind pointing us toward the nearest exit, or do we need to fill out paperwork first?" There was a pause. A long one. On the other end, the being's dark eyes narrowed with something between confusion and offense. "You do not appear concerned. Should I be?" Word moved fast in the Therian Dominion, faster than light in the way that gossip always outpaces truth. Within the hour, a shuttle escort of 6 warships had matched course with the Tubman, herding her toward the ringworld central spire, the seat of the Ascendant, where the Dominion's ruling council convened. Aboard the shuttle bay, Brooks straightened her jacket and looked at her small crew, Ortiz, sweating through his shirt, Whitfield, clutching a data pad like a shield, and Petty Officer René Castellano, their tactical officer, who had spent the last hour quietly recalibrating every scanner they had, just in case. "They keep calling us the unconcerned ones," Whitfield muttered. "I don't know if that's an insult or what." "It's data," Brooks said. "People who expect fear get nervous when they don't see it. Let's not correct the impression." "Ma'am, with respect," Castellano said, "we are an unarmed survey ship that just tripped into the middle of what looks like a Dyson ring empire with a war fleet the size of Ohio. Some concern seems medically appropriate." "Concern, sure. Panic, no." Brooks smiled thinly. "Panic's how you lose a negotiation before it starts." The escort delivered them into a vast throne chamber built from something like living crystal, threaded through with veins of soft light that pulsed in time with unseen machinery. At its center sat the Ascendant Council, 7 Therian elders, robed, ancient, their faces unreadable. The eldest, being introduced only as first voice, regarded the 4 humans the way one might regard an insect that had wandered onto a formal dinner table. "You have violated the sovereign boundary," first voice intoned, "a border enforced for 11,000 cycles, against species with fleets, with gods, with empires older than your sun. And yet you stand here without escort ships, without weapons, without so much as a raised voice." "We didn't know the border was there," Brooks said simply. "We're new. Earth's only been doing faster-than-light travel for about 6 years. We got here by accident. Our engine glitched." A ripple of something passed through the council. "Not laughter, exactly, but close. You claim to be a species 6 years into stellar travel," said a second counselor, voice dripping with disbelief, "and yet you address the Ascendant Council of the Therian Dominion as though we were merchants at a trade stall." "With respect," Brooks said, "you invited yourselves into being scary. We just came here to say sorry for the accident and ask for a way home." Everything else is you deciding how nervous we ought to be. First voice leaned forward. Then you do not fear us. Brooks considered the question honestly, the way she considered everything. I think, she said slowly, you've had 11,000 years to build something that looks unbeatable. Rings around stars. Fleets that block out the sky. That's real, and it's impressive, and if you wanted to hurt us, you probably could. But my species has spent about 200,000 years getting stepped on by ice ages, plagues, asteroids, and each other, and we're still here. We've learned that being scared doesn't make you safer. It just makes you slower to think. The chamber went silent. Whitfield, beside her, whispered, Ellen, what are you doing? Trusting the room, Brooks murmured back. It was Ortiz, of all people, who broke the silence that followed, not with words, but with a soft chime from his wrist unit. He glanced down, froze, then looked up at Brooks with wide eyes. Captain. Scanners just parsed the ringworld's core reactor signature. That output, that's not stable. It's decaying. Slowly, but it's decaying. I'd guess a few decades before cascade failure, maybe less. The council's easy contempt flickered. Impossible, snapped the second counselor. The Ascendant core has burned steady for 10,000 cycles. I'm not trying to start a panic, Ortiz said carefully, glancing at Brooks for permission, who nodded once. But our sensor array is built for exactly this kind of thing. We come from a solar system that nearly killed itself with a reactor meltdown 2 centuries back. We got real good, real fast, at reading the warning signs. And your core's showing them. Castellano pulled up the readings on the chamber's projector without asking, throwing looping graphs of harmonic decay across the crystal walls. The council members leaned forward despite themselves, silver faces catching the light. First voice studied the data for a long moment, and something in the ancient being's posture changed, the imperial stillness cracking, just slightly, into something more human than any of them expected. Our engineers have reported irregularities, first voice admitted quietly. We attributed them to age. Divine cycles do not fail. Everything fails eventually, Brooks said, gently now, no edge in it. The trick is catching it before it does. We'd be glad to share what we know. No conditions. No trade demands. Consider it a thank you for not blowing up our little ship on sight. They stayed 6 days. Ortiz and Castellano worked alongside Threxian engineers twice their age in wisdom and 100 times their age in years, mapping decay patterns, retrofitting containment fields with human stopgap solutions that were crude, stubborn, and effective. Whitfield spent long nights in negotiation halls, and somewhere in translating stabilization protocols into Court Threxian, the word unconcerned stopped sounding like an insult and started sounding, in the mouths of the council, like something close to respect. On the 7th day, First Voice stood before them in the shuttle bay as the Tubman, engine repaired with borrowed Dominion parts, prepared to depart. You entered our sovereign space by accident, First Voice said. You leave it as something the Dominion has never extended to another species before. What's that? Brooks asked. A standing invitation. Return whenever your people wish. Registered, this time. The ancient being paused. Tell me, Captain, is your species always this calm in the face of empires? Brooks thought of ice ages, plagues, wars, and the long, unglamorous crawl of a species that had never once had the luxury of being afraid for very long before it had to get back to work. We're not calm, she said. We're just used to fixing things scarier than us before breakfast. Your ring's just the biggest one yet. The Harriet Tubman eased out of the docking bay, past the Golden Ring, past the Silent Fleet, and back into open space, smaller than everything around it, and entirely unbothered by that fact.